From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Could young blood be the answer to cheating death? It may sound like the story in a vampire movie, but now there is scientific research that supports the theory. U.S. scientists have discovered a protein in the blood in young mice that can undo some effects of aging in old mice. The same protein is present in human blood. Two papers published in the journal Science discuss this protein called GDF11. Researchers at Harvard University said GDF11 improved the brain and muscle ability of older mice. This protein is found in high levels in the blood of young mice. In one experiment, the scientists increased the levels of GDF11 in aging mice by surgically connecting the blood flow systems of young mice to the old mice. Blood containing higher levels of GDF11 flowed among both groups. In another experiment, they injected the protein into old mice. The old mice formed new blood vessels. The animals' blood flow improved, and the aging process changed directions or reversed in every tissue the researchers observed. The scientists saw the greatest change in the old mice that shared blood flow with the young. Researcher Lee Rubin is a professor of stem cell research at Harvard's Stem Cell Institute. His team looked at the effect of GDF11 on brain tissue. He says the operation produced structural changes in the old brain, making it more like the young brain. Another scientist said that GDF11 repaired DNA damage linked to aging. There is growing hope that GDF11 might someday repair and renew unhealthy human hearts. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Should girls go to school only with other girls? Is it better for boys to attend all boys schools? Educators at a school for girls in Washington, D.C. believe children do better in classes of the same sex. But other experts say there is no real evidence to support that idea. They believe there are other, more important things that make a school effective. Excel Academy is the first all-girls school in Washington, D.C. that is independently operated and supported by taxpayers. It opened its doors in 2008. One of its students is 10-year-old Anaira Clavijo. Anaira attended kindergarten in a classroom with boys. She has now been at Excel for the last 5 years. Anaira says boys have different interests than girls. She praises her school, saying the staff makes her feel like the smartest person in the world. The Excel Academy provides free education to children from families without much money. It serves more than 600 girls from preschool through grade 5. 3 meals are served each day. Kay Savage established the school and is its leader. She says that when boys and girls are taught together, the teachers teach for the boys. She says boys are a little louder and much more active than the girls. She says she believes that makes girls second-class citizens in their schools. Elaine Weiss is an education expert at the Economic Policy Institute. She believes other considerations besides same-sex classes have a bigger effect on success in school. She says everything that happens in children's early development is important. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. Most kinds of rose plants come from Asia, but roses are also native to other areas, including Northwest Africa, Europe, and the United States. In 1986, the U.S. Congress chose the rose as America's national flower. Technically, Congress and President Ronald Reagan declared it the national floral emblem. Whatever the name, the decision did not smell sweet to lovers of other flowers. Some people say roses are difficult to grow, but you have a good chance of success if you start with a few suggestions from experts. You should plant your roses where they can get sunshine for about 6 hours on bright days. You can buy roses from a garden center or by mail order. You can buy potted roses, also known as container roses or bare root plants. Each kind has its fans. Some gardeners say potted roses are easier to plant. They say the roots develop better. The University of Illinois Extension advises getting bare root roses as close to planting time as you can. If they arrive before you are ready to plant them, make sure the packing material is moist. Keep the plants in a cool, dark place. You plant the roses while they are dormant. The resting plants have no leaves but still need water. When growing roses, the soil should feel moist deep down. Watering should be done in the morning. That can prevent problems called black spot and mildew. But do not water too much. In normal conditions, placing mulch around rose plants is a good idea. Mulch suppresses weeds and holds moisture in the soil. You can use mulch made from bark, pine needles, cottonseed, or oak leaves. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Not everything you see in Hollywood movies is real. Some of the beautiful, strange, scary images might have been produced on a computer. They are called visual effects. They once were produced only in Hollywood, but that has changed. New technology makes it possible for one film to include visual effects created in different countries. Venkatesh Radham is the Chief Executive Officer of Reliance Media Works in India, he says there has been a huge rise in the amount of content processed in different parts of the world. He says India, China, Taiwan, and Korea are among the countries with companies that produce visual effects. But Dave Rand says this hurts U.S. companies. Mr. Rand is a co-founder of the Association of Digital Artists, Professionals, and Technicians. He says he has worked for several companies that were driven out of business because of overseas competition. Daniel Lay is the association's other founder. He believes U.S. federal courts should get involved in Hollywood's use of visual effects made by foreign companies. Mr. Lay says there should be a tax ordered on work produced outside the U.S. Venkatesh Radham of Reliance Media Works disagrees. He says working with Hollywood improves the quality of visual effects done worldwide. He says it is important for visual effects companies to have a presence in the U.S. He says the industry will continue to develop, and he adds those who want to stay in the business will have to continue to change with it. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. On May 30th, a court in Cambodia found guilty 23 clothing workers and union members. They were arrested during violent protests in January in which at least 4 workers were killed. However, the court immediately suspended the sentences. International companies had watched the case closely. The defendants were charged with a number of offenses, including incitement and property damage. Legal experts said the trial did not meet international guidelines. They said the judge barred defendants from speaking or questioning witnesses. The court gave the defendants sentences from 1 to 4.5 years. But it then ruled to suspend the sentences to time already served. Unrest about pay has resulted in deadly protests in Cambodia. The monthly minimum wage currently stands at $100. The garment workers want that raised to $160. There is also a disputed law related to trade unions that the government wants to pass by the end of the year. A delegation of international clothing companies recently spoke to top government officials. Representatives from H&M, Puma, and The Gap said they would find other sources for their products unless worker conditions improved. The garment industry in Cambodia employs about 600,000 workers. The brands offer to pay more to factories that employ workers. But they say the Cambodian government must also act by not using violence or the courts against protesters. The clothing or garment manufacturing industry is an important part of Cambodia's economy, providing about $5.5 billion in exports last year. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. The United Nations says the world's population will increase by 34% by the year 2050. Scientists and others know it will be difficult to meet the food needs of so many people. A recent study shows that soybean crops and computers may help deal with the problem. The UN predicts food production must increase by 70% to meet the needs of a richer population. The UN expects more people will live in cities than in rural areas. But today, there is little to no increase in the productivity of major crops. Kenneth Quinn is the president of the World Food Prize Foundation. He says the need to increase food production is the greatest difficulty humanity has ever faced. Darren Drury is a scientist at the American Space Agency, NASA. He led a study of soybeans, which NASA calls the world's most important protein crop. Researchers used a computer to help create a more productive soybean plant that uses less water. The scientists recorded a 7% increase in soybean productivity. The computer helped researchers do work that would have taken many years in the field. The next step is to test the computer's design. Stephen Long is a professor at the University of Illinois and one of the writers of the report on the soybean study. He told us that researchers used a computer program to study what would happen if they changed the way the plant grows. Professor Long says it is important to find solutions to the predicted global food shortage before it happens. He says it will be 20 years before farmers can begin growing a more productive soybean once it has been developed. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Many schools across the U.S. hold graduation ceremonies at this time of year. In some schools, even 5- and 6-year-olds observe their graduation from kindergarten. So can older people, much older. 70-year-old Jerry Reed just graduated from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He earned a bachelor's degree. Mr. Reed might not look like the average college student. His hair is definitely grayer. But still, Jerry Reed's age is easy to forget. Other UVA students know him as one of their own. Mr. Reed fit right into the Who Crew, a group that cheers for the school at sports events. He also joined a fraternity, a men's group on campus. He sang drinking songs along with many other students. Mr. Reed's young school friends say they can talk to him about almost anything. About a half-century ago, while in his 20s, Mr. Reed was racing cars and chasing girls. But he says his friend Bill would invite him to UVA parties. He says Bill told him that he needed to go to school or he would never make anything of his life. That was in 1963. Jerry Reed says it took him 48 years to take that advice. In 2011, he entered college. UVA professor Luke Wright says Mr. Reed influenced students. Professor Wright says he opened the minds of the young adults. The teacher says Mr. Reed showed them that life does not end at 40. Instead, the 70-year-old college graduate believes that getting older can be the beginning of a dream. Mr. Reed says he plans to return to UVA for graduate school. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A popular expression goes, "What does not kill us makes us stronger." But when it comes to being bullied, that may not be the case. Increasing evidence suggests that the effects of being bullied do not end with childhood. The psychological and physical damage, like anxiety and depression, can continue into adulthood. A recent Duke University report supports other research that shows bullying can have permanent effects. The report is based on research that began in 1993. The Great Smoky Mountains Study observed 1,420 children from Western North Carolina for years. The scientists followed the people as they went from childhood into young adulthood. The research showed that those who were bullied were at higher risk of long-term mental health problems. It found that adults who were bullied as children had higher levels of C-reactive protein, or CRP. CRP is a sign of nervous tension. Higher levels of CRP are linked to health problems. The study also found something completely new about bullying. It seems that bullies are healthier than those bullied in terms of CRP levels. The study found the lowest levels of CRP in people who had never been bullied but had bullied others. Experts on bullying worry about that message. Catherine Bradshaw is Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for the Prevention of Youth Violence in Maryland. She says that a possible health gain should not be understood as permission to bully. Professor William Copeland led the study. He says a higher social standing for bullies might explain their lower CRP levels. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Scientists in the United States have announced the creation of the first transistor with only 2 dimensions. A transistor is a small electronic device that transfers or carries electrical current. The device helps to create an electrical path that provides power to other devices. Scientists hope the new 2D transistors will be used for building high-resolution displays that need very little energy. Scientists from the University of California and Argonne National Laboratory in Illinois created the transistors. They say the transistors are only a few atoms thick. Scientists consider material that thin two-dimensional. Usually, transistors are made with the element silicon. But the scientists say they used materials that have even better electronic properties. Computer processors, memory chips, TV screens, and other electronic devices contain billions of silicon-based transistors. But these very small electrical parts have certain limitations. Dimitris Ioannou is an electrical engineering professor at George Mason University. He says the traditional transistor has been improved as much as possible. He says researchers want transistors to be see-through and softer than those made with silicon. These new transistors can carry higher current. They also can move the current much faster than traditional transistors. This is important for high-definition screens. Scientists say there is no good method for printing a large number of these new transistors on one base layer of material. But they believe that someday it may be possible. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Low-cost health insurance is soon to be available to students and small business workers in Senegal through a World Bank program. Nearly 2/3 of all Senegalese are unable to get health insurance. Many fall into debt when they get sick or injured. The World Bank Group's International Finance Corporation is working with the International Center for Development and Research to provide the insurance. The bank says it plans to offer low-cost private health insurance plans in Senegal as part of the area's first private copay program. Tifan Krin is an operations officer at the IFC. He says health insurance through private companies is very costly in the West African nation. He says about 65% of people in Senegal do not have any health care coverage. In Senegal, only civil service employees or workers at companies with more than 50 employees are able to get health care coverage. Mr. Krin says many people take out loans to pay for health care. He says this can empty a family's savings. The IFC says that it will work with 6 private Senegalese insurance companies to share the costs of health risks. It says it will offer micro health care products at well below normal cost. Mr. Krin says the plans will cost as little as $16 per year, although plans that include hospital visits will cost up to $60 per year. Students can get basic health care for just $3 per year. Members will have to pay 20% of usual treatment costs. Mr. Kren says the pilot program plans to target around 108,000 people during the first year in Dakar. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.